Good afternoon, and welcome to the Prince George's County Memorial Library System's Community Conversation Series with Roberta Phillips. Roberta is the library's CEO and hosting this weekly conversation series so that you all can get to know our county's community partners and county agencies and various resources and programs that are available for you. And I'm just going to mute something that is giving me an echo real quick and then get underway with introducing our very special guests. Okay, that feels much better. I was hearing all kinds of voices in my head, which is not ideal. But it was coming through clearly, but timing things was quite funny. So I'm your ghost host here. My name is Nick. I'm the central control for all things PGCMLS virtual programs. We are so honored today to have two very, very, very special guests who are tremendous leaders in our community, both in Prince George's County and also tremendous leaders in both the state of Maryland and the whole DMV region. First and foremost, you've already met Roberta, our CEO at the library system. We also have State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, who is so generous with her time to join us today. We appreciate her presence. And we also have very wonderful partner and friend who was on here doing a read aloud for us last week, and that is Miss Renée Battle-Brooks, who is the Executive Director of the Prince George's County Human Relations Commission. So our goal with this conversation is for you all who are tuning in to ask your questions as we go. Roberta will lead the discussion for the first part, and Roberta will invite the state's attorney to speak a bit about her office's work generally and also during the COVID crisis, and then we'll go to a more open conversation about the Human Relations Commission and questions. So thank you so much, and take it away, Roberta.
Thank you. So great to have these powerful and formidable women with me leading our state and our county. So can you tell us a little bit about what a state attorney does, and specifically, what are you doing during this whole crisis?
Right. So I can tell you that this crisis has been really interesting because the work of our office, we are considered a law enforcement office. It does continue, but our operations are limited because of the limitations that have been placed on the court. So generally, my office handles state level prosecutions of all state level offenses that occur within Prince George's County. And so most of the time you hear about state's attorneys being in the courtroom prosecuting defendants. So we do that, but we also we're problem solvers in our in our community as well. So we do give individuals who need a second chances. So we participate in problem solving courts at both the circuit and district court levels. We also run our own reentry program called Back on Track, and that's for first-time felony drug offenders who need a second chance and who we believe can be fully rehabilitated. And so we also try to work very hard in our community, recognizing that there are people who make mistakes, to give people who are not going to be a danger to our community an opportunity to get it right. We also work very closely with our victims because our victims are extremely important to us. We really represent we represent the interests, obviously, of Prince George's County and the state in these prosecutions, but we are also there to seek justice for victims of crime. And so we work with them not only in terms of preparing them for trials, but also we work to ensure that they are strong and they are whole. We work very closely with our Family Justice Center with respect to our victims of domestic violence, as well as our victims of human trafficking and child abuse. And I know that you have an excellent panelist who will talk a lot about human trafficking, but we work really, really closely with all of our partners during this time because the courthouse is actually closed. So there are no juries impaneled. We don't even have a grand jury impaneled right now. Our grand jury is not meeting, which means that we're not indicting cases. However, arrests are still occurring. So there are bond reviews that are being done remotely. My attorneys first couple of weeks of the pandemic, we were still going into the courtroom to argue our position at the bond hearings. Now all of that is being done remotely, and the defendants are remotely. They're at the jail, but they have a camera at the jail that can remote them in, so we can see the defendants and they can participate to some extent during those bond hearings. So bond hearings are mainly what we're doing right now. We still have some operations around reentry courts, problem-solving courts like our mental health court, drug court, and veterans court, because we want to make sure that people who need services at this time, even though the courts aren't open, we still want to make sure that we're connecting them to the services that they need in order to get well. The only thing that's really not able to happen at this time is the actual drug test. But they do get phone counseling or remote counseling, virtual counseling. And so we think that's a great opportunity, again, to connect people who need resources to those resources. And we're also doing juvenile detention hearings. So young people who are being held in our county jail, our county youth detention facility, looking at ways to potentially safely get them back out into the community where they can be safe but monitored while they're there. So we're working really hard on bond hearings. We have what's called an Operation Safe Release. We're trying to lower our jail population, but we're trying to do so responsibly and safely so that we can reduce the number of inmates and thereby creating a little bit more space for people to social distance even in our jails. So we've been working with Mary Lou McDonough and our public defender and other partners on that. So a lot of work is still being done. We're still screening cases, but we're just not going to trial at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I think something you said resonates with all of us because we all want to connect community members to resources.
Yeah.
And I think the library is a convener of those resources. So again, that's why we're having these conversations. So people know who to turn to and where to go should they need service of all kinds of things. So I want to talk a little bit about the work that Renée Battle Brooks is doing. She is a good partner with the library. My did you know fact about Renée that I just learned today is that she plays the violin. And so who knew? And because I know Renée very well, I can give you 5 words. Well, one's kind of a phrase to describe her. She's a community advocate. She is fierce. She is bold. She is warm. And she's also very kind, which is really important. And so her work is around civil rights and working with Prince Georgians to combat human trafficking. She works on really protecting what she calls the protected classes. So I'll let her talk a little bit about that, but also making sure that the discrimination is not happening in housing, employment, and public accommodations. So Renée, I'm gonna send it over to you to talk a little bit about the work you do and how this whole thing is affecting what you normally do.
Thank you so much. And we are very pleased to be on this panel with the state's attorney and with you and to be able to share information to our citizens. So yes, the Human Relations Commission, Prince George's County Human Relations Commission, is the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement. So we wear many, many hats. I like to call up the 5 pillars of really what makes up the Human Relations Commission. And one of them is exactly what you think, and that is the investigation and enforcement of civil rights. Civil rights in the area, the 3 main areas, but there are actually 5, but you listed housing, employment, public accommodations. For those who may not understand what public accommodations are, that's any place that you're in the county where you're shopping, a grocery store or a hotel, a gym, a restaurant, any place where the public goes. So we handle areas of discrimination there. Education and law enforcement are the 5. parts of discrimination. The word protected class is sort of a legal term, but what it means is that the law provides for certain types of discrimination that we are allowed to pursue if people come to our agency to file a complaint. And so an example of some of those protected classes would be age, race, color, national origin, personal appearance, religion, disability, sex, occupation, marital status, familial status, sexual orientation, physical or mental disability. So those are the protected areas, some of them. So we are charged with investigating those complaints if a person comes in to say that they believe they were discriminated against in one of these classes while trying to get some sort of housing, while at the job within Prince George's County, while at the grocery store, et cetera. And so we are still functioning, we are open, but we are not physically there. And so we are taking complaints of discrimination two ways. One, you can email us at HRC staff, that stands for Human Relations Commission staff, at co.pg.md.us. So that's HRC staff at co.pg.md.us. Or you can call 240-695-7220. And we will take your complaint remotely, and we'll do the interviews remotely, and we'll do as much of the investigation that we can remotely. At some point when we all are out from under this emergency, we will then be able to conduct site visits and other things that require a physical presence. And so in that one area of what we do, that is how it has changed. And just really quickly, the four other pillars, we are charged with administering and running the Human Trafficking Task Force, that is both labor and sex, and we can drill down later if anybody wants to hear exactly how that is. We are charged with managing a program through the ISLA initiative, and what it is partnering with CARE. CARE is the Capital Area Immigration Rights Resource Coalition. And this comes from a law that the County Council passed that says if you're a resident of Prince George's County and you're under threat of deportation, an attorney will be provided for you during that process. So that's a huge thing, because the Supreme Court has ruled that that is not considered a critical area like in the criminal venue with Ms. Braveboy and public defenders. So there is not a public facing agency that goes with people who are under threat of deportation to immigration court. So that is what the ISLA project does. We are also charged with language access and simply making sure that every resident, every citizen of Prince George's County that wants to access services, some of the main services in the county, that language should not be a barrier. So we're in the process of working on that project so that we have some of the main languages spoken here in the county covered for citizens who need to access programs. And the fifth and final pillar of what the Human Relations Commission does is we're tasked with reducing instances of hate, bias, and violence within the county. And we do that through many ways. And that's how we are partnered, Roberta, with the Lighthouse system and others. Yes. And we enjoy that partnership. And we try to, mainly in the evening, engage the community in various forms. So one format is with our library partner through reading circles. We have Movies That Matter with our library system the second Monday of every month, where we show movies and then have a discussion. We believe that discussion is really what changes people. discussion and connection. And if you can connect with somebody, I believe that's how change starts. So we believe that in order to reduce instances of hate, bias, and violence, we have to see each other as human beings. And Prince George's County has a rich fabric of various ethnicities and religions and national origins and sexual orientation and everything that makes us Prince George's proud. And it's not good enough to just live next to each other in a community. We have to live together and thrive and make this Prince George's proud. So engaging and figuring out that we all have the same desires and goals, and that we are all the same. So that's how we connect. So some of our partners, as we said, are the library. We have partnered with Joe's Movement Emporium and some of their fantastic programs that they do, again, where we then engage in dialogue and discussion after, whether it's a play or a survivor story. We have also partnered with the Prince George's County Police Department. We helped introduce their newly formed Prince George's County LGBTQ outreach team, which is comprised of Prince George's County police officers who are part of the LGBTQ community. And it's to, again, inform the community and to be a conduit. And so those are just some of our partners and some of the programs. We have conversations in the evening as well. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did. It did. So I think, that leads me to something else that's, top of mind is the census and making sure that everyone gets counted. Can you address some of the fears folks might have around the census, especially those immigrants who have some fear about deportation?
Yes, that's such a great question. And that is exactly the fear. We have immigrant populations in the county, and there's always that thread that runs through. But we have worked hard to get the word out, we as in the Prince George's County, all of us, to get the word out that that is not a question that is on the census, and that it is so, so important to fill out the census because it informs the financial money that we receive both federally and by the state, and it is so important. And we're talking for the next 10 years, so it is so important for everyone to take the census, to fill it out online or in the mail, but it's so important.
And I did it. It takes 5 minutes. It's very simple. And I didn't count my dog and my cat, but I did count my husband. So it's really important that you count every member of your household, even if they're babies, because we find that children 0 to 5 are often not counted. And then there's some other vulnerable populations that I believe are in danger of not being counted. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I know that the census team and the census committee that has been working long and hard under the county exec's direction to really identify all of those vulnerable populations and to roll out programs that they have before now and ways to get the word out so that everybody is included.
I'd like to ask you both a little bit about this topic of connecting as humans, because it's very important to me personally, but also as the library looks at how we connect people. Education seems to be the main forum that you've both spoke of, and educating people about learning about other people, also learning about their own rights so they don't get in a situation that's precarious. Could you speak a little bit about, from both your perspectives, how that education helps move us forward as a community?
From my vantage point, what we see are a lot of defendants who have a lot of educational deficiencies. Some have not graduated from high school. Many did not perform well in in high school. And so what we know is that education is one of the factors that will lead people in the wrong direction in life. And I think that we need, number one, our libraries so much. Now, almost more than ever, and the fact that you are creating a platform where people can understand and get resources outside of the physical walls of the library is so critically important. The library also really serves as a supplement to our education, the education that we give in our school systems, or if it's a private school, that's fine too. But the point is, the library is our community resource. It's where I think young people and older people too can develop their passions, things that they get excited about, because in school you got to learn everything, and some people have certain interests, right? And in the library you get to explore those interests. So it's really important that we pique people's curiosity about learning and education, because that will make us a safer society. And not only will it make us a stronger society economically and otherwise, but it'll also make us safer, because it is unlikely that I get a defendant who is a college graduate. That would be highly unlikely for me to get a defendant who is a college graduate. And so what we know is that if we're able to get people to perform, get them to be proficient when they're in school, they have a greater chance for success in life and a greater chance not to become a part of the criminal justice system. So education is everything, and the services of the library are so important to our community.
I agree. If I could get someone to cue America the Beautiful,
a lot of people don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, while I give my little 2 cents, I agree. You know, education is, I believe, the opportunity for education is what separates the United States of America and other countries, the opportunity. I have had the opportunity with my parents to live in quite a few countries and to attend school. And I know that, for instance, in England, where I lived, you're weeded out by maybe age 10. You know, you have tests that you're given, and if you don't perform, you are put on another track. This is the only country that I know of that you can completely mess up most of your high school career and still have a chance to attend university by doing whatever the remedial courses are. But we have this opportunity, and it makes me so sad sometimes to see how we squander that opportunity by skipping school, by not, having parents that really make their children go. I'm not saying all parents, it's a minority that don't insist, but school is such an opportunity. That is what separates us. And you don't have to have been born in a place where you have money to go to school in this country. I visited other countries where education is free, but you have to wear a uniform. And if you don't have the money for the uniform, you can't go to school. So there's so many barriers that we don't have here that it's just phenomenal. So education is the key to success. So we can end Playing America the Beautiful now. Thank you.
Okay. I was just going to mention that I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't know that the Prince George's Memorial Library also has a library and 2 librarians in the Correctional Center to assist those incarcerated folks. And we also are we like to reach out to people who are re-entering the job force, whether it's somebody who has been with the justice system or somebody who is a veteran. So those are areas that the library is really looking to amp up. We know when we reopen that we will be even busier than ever, helping people with employment needs. And so that's something that's kind of always on our radar, but we know that it'll be even greater. Renée, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the programs we've done and one that's coming up in regards to anti-racism and being culturally aware and being able to live in a place that's so diverse and not be afraid to ask questions of your neighbor and being able to say, oh, I apologize. I didn't know that what I said was not correct. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the book, What If I Say the Wrong Thing, is one that you told me about, Roberta, and I'm still getting through it, but we are going to be talking about that at the end of this month. And, it is so important as citizens, and I use that in the corporate sense in terms of we, the people here in a given geographical area, that, that we learn to engage and talk, and without fear and without judgment. And so What If I Say the Wrong Thing is really exploring how and what you say and ways to maneuver, because our fear of saying the wrong thing should not keep us from learning to understand those that are different from us. And so that's sort of a summary of the program. Yeah.
And I think too, it's interesting because, like you said, you see somebody different, and if you've grown up in a situation where you were never exposed to people that were different than you, and that was my experience, then there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of trepidation, and I think those fears sometimes end up being things that possibly could escalate and to violence or other things that really affect our community, and maybe things that you both see in the complaints that come through and the people that you defend, and maybe even the victims.
Yeah. It's a two-way street. And so we have to be willing to ask those questions, but we also have to be willing to receive those questions and not jump to a space of conclusion of why it was said or how it was said. And it is difficult, especially in our current climate. It is difficult because we seem more divided than ever. And we attach labels to people. And with those labels become our preconceived, our biases, our implicit biases. Sometimes it's not implicit. Sometimes it is something that we have decided to believe, right? Versus implicit, where your brain has calculated it without you knowing it. And so it is a two-way street. So we have to be willing to receive questions. And if somebody asks the question, not immediately get our back up, or, really to delve, to peel back, in a non-confrontational way. When you ask that question, it made me feel blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you didn't mean it, but I'd like to answer the question. Or asking, well, what do you mean by that? There are ways to keep that dialogue open, but in a relationship, we have to want, and that's really what this is. We're trying to form relationships through the Human Relations Commission, but it is, for a relationship to work, it has to have both parties wanting to engage.
And I'd love to chime in there. Renee is a former prosecutor, so she will fully appreciate this. In our business, oftentimes we're interfacing with victims. Victims present very differently. Some of it may be cultural. Some of it may be because of a traumatic experience that they've had. Some victims are more aggressive than others. Some victims are upset, angry, hurt, and they express that and take that out on prosecutors, on victim witness advocates. We often have to understand that they're coming from a place of hurt, and they may say things to us that we're like, hey, we're just here to help, but it's not directed totally at us. It's because of what happened to them. And so we have to be very empathetic in our work and dealing with people, some of whom don't speak the language. And so we work with folks in our office who speak Spanish, let's say. And so sometimes the attorney doesn't speak Spanish, but the victim witness coordinator speaks Spanish. And there's a translation that needs to occur, and understanding that some of the words that may be used aren't meant to be offensive. It's just that them expressing themselves. And then we have people who come from different cultures, and in some of those cultures, they're really aggressive. And you're like, well, how could they be a victim if they're that aggressive? Well, guess what? They are a victim, but that's how they react to their victimization. And we have to understand that. But we're human too. And it's hard to be yelled at. It's hard to be cursed out. It's hard to be told that you don't like, the way we're doing something. I mean, that's just human nature. People, they feel that. But we do our best to just recognize what our role is, what our job is. Our job is to get justice. We have to try to get through some of those layers that may divide us or may separate us or make it a little bit more challenging. But bottom line, if we're searching and we're trying to achieve justice, we have to learn how to just address those issues that may come up so that we can hold those responsible for their actions. But the interpersonal skills, that what do you call it, emotional intelligence, all of that stuff is extremely important in both of our lines of work. I know that Ms. Battle Brooks and I, we deal with victims of human trafficking, and they present very differently. Some people don't feel like they're victims. They feel like, hey, I want to engage in this activity, but it's because they've been beaten down over a number of years, or they've been told that's the only thing that they're good for. And so we have to be there for them too. And sometimes it is very, very challenging, but it is our job to try to get justice, to try to get them services, whether or not they want those services or not. Yeah.
And I think that's a tenet of all of our work, is that empathy is something that presents itself when you work with the public. And I tell my staff, when somebody walks into a library, you don't know what they've dealt with during that course of that day. You could be the only friendly, smiling face they see. And for them, that's the light that we need to be. Because again, everybody's human. Everybody comes into a public space with different expectations, with different experiences. And I think the more we connect with each other, the more that we smile. And, I'm really liking that tagline that's happening right now with this epidemic, is that we're all in this together.
Yes.
Because it feels really good. And it's kind of sad that it took an epidemic for us to really, put this at the fore. But I think the idea that, we are stronger together. And the more we relate to each other, the more we can have discussions, the more we can think about celebrating our differences and our specialness that we all have as humans, and then coming together and also finding the commonalities, because they're there, is something that, I hope these conversations that we're starting to have virtually will happen in real time even more once we can physically be together.
I agree. I also hope that sort of this, what I call the hit and run culture on social media, maybe is abated a little bit more. People feel like they can get on and say every manner of mean things to somebody that is a friend or was a friend, and then, leave, hit and run, and there's no opportunity to respond, and they unfriend or whatever the social media platform is. And I hope that if there's one good thing that comes out of the COVID-19 crisis, is that we, as you said, learn more humanity, that we learn to be accepting, to be more open-minded. Yes, we can have a position and be an advocate for that position, but we always have to be receptive to hear something else. Maybe we too can learn something from the position we've taken. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this virus really doesn't have any social parameters. It doesn't care how much money you make, or the color of your skin, or your age, or any of those things you talked about protecting. I mean, it can strike anybody. So I think there's also some conversation around, we're all vulnerable too. not just to this virus, but in this world, we're all vulnerable. We can all make bad decisions. We can all go off on the wrong path. We can all make choices and say things that, we need to think about a little more. So I think it's a good platform for people to come together and say, let's use this time to start thinking about what matters and what's important. There's so many people right now who need food. And so that's a real significant thing that we take for granted, especially in the United States. Cue the music. So that's just kind of top of mind. I'm wondering, Nick, if anybody from our audience has any questions for the panel.
Yes. Thank you all for your discussion so far. It's been really enlightening and insightful. Just shared a resource in the chat box, which is the Prince George's County Food Equity Council. Their website has a great list, of all of the opportunities to access food and meals in the county. We have this link up on the Prince George's County website, on the Memorial Library System's website, on our coronavirus temporary resources. But you can check out that link and get access to all the information you could need about food and the folks making it available. So we did have one question so far from the audience, and we encourage everyone to please type in your questions in the chat box on whatever platform you're viewing this discussion on, and we will get those questions to our moderator and speakers. So the first question was from Olivia, who's watching on Crowdcast, and their question was, do incarcerated people in Prince George's County who cannot have in-person visits have increased alternatives for contact with outside family?
I believe I was speaking with the head of our Department of Corrections, Mary Lou McDonough, just yesterday about some of the provisions they're making for individuals who are incarcerated at this time in our local jail. I believe that there are more opportunities for them to use their cell phones or phones to call and have that connection with family during this time. But I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. That is really better directed to the Department of Corrections. But it is my understanding that they have provided more opportunities to have phone calls with family members.
Great, thank you for that answer. And just from my own personal experience, I've been on the Joint Information Center team for the county. Just want to make sure that everyone knows that the corrections team has been involved in all of the county's emergency response for this, and the safety and wellness of folks who are at those facilities, both on the staff side and who are incarcerated, has been paramount during this whole crisis. And they're fully integrated into this conversation of taking care of ourselves as a community. And it's not a question of us, them. We are all Prince Georgians together.
Yeah. And let me just say, my office, we early on when this pandemic really started, we took the initiative to say that we want to help safely reduce the prison population. And so we reviewed all of the inmates who are in our local jail. We began a review about 3 weeks ago, and we have reduced the population in our prison pretty significantly. My understanding from the director was that the population in our prison was about 730 to 740 when we started. We are now right under 600 inmates in our local jail. And so we continue to look at and evaluate inmates, not just those who are being held pretrial, but also those who have sentences that they're serving out. If they're nearing the end of their sentence, 30, 60, possibly 90, even up to 120 days out, depending on the nature of the charges and whether or not they're first, second, or third time offender, we are making recommendations for release, even for those who are serving out sentences, because you're right, we are all in this together, and these are either Prince Georgians or people being housed in Prince George's. We have to care about everyone, and we want everyone to social distance as much as possible. It is very difficult in a jail to social distance. I believe they have 10 confirmed cases of COVID-19 at the jail. All of those individuals have been separated. They're in the medical unit. They're being isolated so that they're not infecting others. Those who were in the housing units with the affected individuals, they are being monitored daily. The inmates all have masks, and also the correctional officers have masks as well. So they're doing their best with the resources that we have to protect everyone. And we care about our inmates, even though they're being held. Many of them, the majority of them are being held pre-trial, which means that there is a presumption of innocence, but they're being held because due to the nature of their offenses or their failure to appear previously in cases, we have some concerns about their ability to show up, or we have a concern about the safety of the community. But they are still human beings. They still have families who care about them and love them. They are still members of our community. And so we have a responsibility to them too.
That's great. So going on a little bit lighter tangent, I would like to ask you both what you're reading right now. Wouldn't be a library forum without that question.
Okay, so y'all.
What if I say the wrong thing?
I'm reading Oprah.
Oh,
magazine.
Oh, magazine. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I am reading, I don't know if you see it, Stolen, 5 Free Boys Kidnapped into Slavery and Their Astonishing Odyssey Home by Richard Bell, who is going to be a guest with us. Mr. Bell teaches early American history at the University of Maryland. So we were going to have him at our Oxon Hill branch, but we're going to do it virtually now. And it's a fascinating story. Talk about human trafficking, Renee. You need to read this one.
Yes.
It's something I didn't really ever know about, the reversed Underground Railroad. So very interesting.
And I just registered for that today. So I am going to read the book. Yeah.
Great. And what are you reading right now?
Oh, I piped up and said, what if I say the wrong thing?
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And I like to read complete fantasy. So when I do read, my almost 19 years as an assistant state's attorney, I tended to, much to my sister's dismay, not read, literary and good things. Things that I know will have a good ending is what I gravitated towards as a way to cope.
Absolutely, trust me. That's why I'm reading Oprah. She's always so inspirational.
Exactly. Yes, we don't need real life to read when we live it, 12, 14 hours a day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I hope you're all taking advantage of our digital resources. If you don't have a stack of books or magazines available, I think we keep offering more and more digitally through our various resources, and you can stream movies, you can stream music. So the library has it all, and you don't have to worry about.
That's good to know.
So here's our secret hack on the digital resources. So we have a platform called Freegal Music where you can actually download music to keep, and it's not just like niche stuff that you wouldn't want to look at, but it's like we've got Whitney on there, we've got Madonna, we have rock bands, like all kinds of stuff, and you can download 5 free tracks a week to keep permanently. That's on top of the streaming that you're able to do for free on there. So lots of great resources.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Good to know.
I guess I need to renew my library card.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You get a virtual library card.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, when you get off this call, make it happen.
Thank you.
So the other thing I just wanted to touch upon is we are, this is just kind of a call to action, and you might also want to chime in, is that there is a lot of, Easter is Sunday and Hanukkah and not Hanukkah, Passover.
Yeah.
And so there is going to be a desire to gather and congregate. But this is a time where you need to stay home. I can't say that enough. And I think, again, religion is something that's so personal. There's so many different religions that are celebrated and different belief systems in our county. And that's something else I know Renee and I have explored and talked about doing some programs around, because everybody is so different, and really, again, celebrating those differences. But for now, I just really, really hope people don't celebrate in their traditional way, but find some way at home to celebrate those coveted holidays. It's not the same as, hunting for Easter eggs. They're not going to do that at the White House. So I just want to let everybody know that's been canceled.
Right.
But just being safe is really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. The only way to get ahead of this, or to get a handle, is to do what all of the health experts are asking us to do. And, we can celebrate great Easter and Passover after this is over. We don't have to wait a year. We can have our own special celebrations once we are all out from under this, and something to look forward to. So I join in Roberta's urging. Please don't do it. Please don't do the big family dinner. Please don't do the Passover celebration, which is tonight and last night, but any other form of gathering. It's just not healthy. And if we haven't learned from our lessons overseas, Italy in particular, then shame.
But there's so many opportunities to do some things virtually as well, because you can have, virtual dinners. One of the things I learned is that, what people are doing now is that they're like buying all the same ingredients and preparing the same meal or foods. And so they're almost like having a meal together. So they'll be on Zoom or Duo or one of these social media platforms where they can actually, see everyone, and they're having theoretically they're having the same foods, but they're just in different households. And that's just so important. That distance is so important. But I know that there's that desire to want to connect. Can I just say one thing that I did that, I encourage everyone to do, because there are people who I miss seeing, like, let's say, my hairdresser. Okay. I miss seeing her. So I'm like, oh gosh, I can't see you again. But you know what I did? One day I just thought about her, and I sent her money on Cash App. Now, yes, she can't provide a service for me right now, but she's not able to perform her craft. She's not able to work. I'm fortunate that in my position as a government employee, I'm considered essential, and we're still getting paychecks. But there's so many people who work really hard and through no fault of their own cannot, make money during this time. So if we have it to give, let's bless somebody out of the blue. And she was so grateful. She sent me a really nice text message.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. I did the same thing. Employee Prince George has a relief fund for hourly workers and part-time workers. And so I donated to that, because again, those hourly workers, people who work in restaurants or wherever, like you said, through no fault of their own, cannot work. And so that's a great effort that's happening in the county. And, you can sign up if you're one of those people who are laid off or lost their income due to this COVID-19. So there's lots of help out there. And I guess, what I'm saying with all of the guests here and in the library is we are still open virtually. Just because you can't physically go to the courthouse or physically go to the library or our office of any sort, we still have resources for you. We still have ways to connect with you, and we still want to help you. Just because we have to stay at home doesn't mean we can't help you. So please reach out. There's a ton of resources on the library's webpage. There's a ton of resources on the county webpage. And I have to echo Renee and say I'm very much Prince George's proud. Our our county executive, Ms. Also Brooks, and her team are doing an extraordinary job of getting resources, keeping people safe, making sure that things are happening in the best possible way for our county. And I'm really proud to be a part of that and be a part of that solution. So a shout out to them for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to just change the subject just for a second while I was thinking about it. You asked about sort of our operations. There are 3 points I wanted to make for people to please consider calling if any of these things. One, we know that during this time, domestic violence, Ms. Also Brooks talked about that, and Ms. Braveboy as well, is on the rise. And there is an intersection between human trafficking and domestic violence that many don't recognize or understand. And so, if anybody is experiencing any of those things, please, please, please reach out and call 311 or 911, or you can call us at 240-695-7220, and we can be the conduit. Also, sadly, national trends are showing an uptick in hate, bias, and violence crimes, xenophobia. And if anybody is experiencing any of that, please reach out to us. Let us help in a way that we can. And employment, if there are any employment discrimination things as a result of what's going on, or anybody's feeling that there is an issue, again, please call us at 240-695-7220 or email hrcstaff@co.pg.md.us. Thank you. I forgot to add that when you asked.
And just to follow up on what Renee said about domestic violence, we have seen an uptick in the number of petitions for protective orders and peace orders, for that matter, that are being filed. And unfortunately, we still have a steady stream of criminal cases that are coming in related to domestic violence. So we have an infographic with a bunch of resource numbers that we can provide to you. And if you want to post on the library's website, we would really appreciate that. We're available 24/7. And in addition to that, I want to make sure that everyone knows that, yes, we do have shelters, but we also work very closely with Southern Management to provide shelter apartments for victims of domestic violence as well. So I know people are really concerned right now about being in spaces with lots of other people. There are options for you. So we really want everyone, if you are a victim, to come forward, because there are resources available to you.
Well, I think I would use the same 5 words I used to describe Renee for you: fierce, bold, warm, kind, and a community advocate.
Oh, thank you.
I so appreciate you both joining us today. Nick, is there any other questions before we exit today, or any other resources we'd like to share?
No other questions, but this will be a last call for questions. You've got about 30 seconds for a new question if you want to catch our wonderful guests before they go back to doing their work. But we appreciate all of you who have tuned in. It will be available on the library's Facebook page and YouTube page for sharing with anyone else that you know about events all day, every day for you. Louds in the mornings, to yoga for kids or for adults who don't want to be judged on Saturdays at 11 a.m. And we've got a lot of great other programming for adults and for teens. So you can visit us at pgcmls.info/virtual-events for all of those details. We have the opportunity for you all to sign up for free virtual library cards. So if you don't have a library card yet and you want one so you can access all the great resources, you can do that right away. Just go to our website. And we wish you all the best and that you stay safe. We had a comment here from our friend Kyla, who is saying that on behalf of the HRC, I want to thank the library for this excellent program and opportunity to connect with the community in this way. Thank you, Kyla. We appreciate you. Kyla is one of those wonderful humans who makes all kinds of magic happen. And she's
That's
also
right. Here.
Storytime hosts, which is awesome. So I think that will wrap it. Roberta, do you want to plug next week's event and give folks the time so they can save it on the calendar?
Yeah, so these community conversations will be happening every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We will have different guests talking about different topics, all revolving around how, as Prince Georgians, we can make this community the best it possibly can be. And so Nick, I know, as my director of all things outreach, is lining up those guests. We should be getting a schedule a little bit more defined. Yet last week was our first kind of foray into this. And so I appreciate both you ladies for being my first official guests and for doing the work you do to make our community so much stronger and better. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you.
Okie doke. Bye-bye, everyone. Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.